Baird was many things to many people: magician, manager, programmer, train collector, boarder, compere, engineer, salesman, raconteur, and a cheeky trickster. But to Ian and I, he was always just Dad. Dad lived a varied and full life and was well loved wherever he went, as is evidenced by all of you here today. To tell all the tales of Dad's life will take longer than we have, so I'll do my best to cover the important bits, but if I miss anything, or if you have any stories you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them at the barbecue later. So without further ado, the life of Baird, Murray, Nugent, Oldrey, told through the lens of his three great passions. Dad was born on the 11th of January 1944 in Shillong, India, to Monica and Walter Copper Oldrey. He was only 3 months old when Copper was killed in action. Due to the vulgar barbarism of war, Baird never got to know his father. It is a testament to Baird's character that he was such a wonderful dad to Ian and I, without having experienced it himself. Monica brought Baird back to the UK as a single mum. She worked her socks off to give him a good upbringing. They moved around quite a lot, and when he was at school age, Baird went off to boarding school at Oldrey, which is only a stone's throw from where Ian and I now live in Guildford. School wasn't the easiest place for Dad. With the initials B.O., he quickly earned the nickname Smell. He wasn't sporty, and so he was an easy target for bullies. Dad, however, rose to the challenge. He was a lateral problem solver, even at that age, so thinking, if you can't beat them, join them, he became the scorer for the first cricket 11. As an inside member of the team, and with his natural charm, being bullied became a thing of the past. It was at Aldrow that he found the first of his lifelong passions, trains. Dad joined the school model railway group. Whilst many of the kids were interested in modelling and playing with the trains, for Dad it was all about control. He loved to see how the trains worked and to make the railway as efficient as possible. That curiosity about the mechanical became a fundamental part of how he viewed the world, even outside of playing trains. Whilst Baird was busy at Aldrow, Monica found the love of her life, Peter Nicol. When Dad was 9, they married, and when he was 10, he had a baby brother, Angus. Peter was a farmer by trade, and Baird's home life took on a distinctly agricultural tilt as the family moved to Hunger Hill near Gillingham. Baird's educational career also progressed as he moved on to Marlborough. It was there that he found his second great passion, entertainment. Dad joined the school light entertainment group and went touring the local towns, performing for captive audiences, whether they liked it or not. He loved the thrill of being the centre of attention, but was equally happy setting up lighting rigs or sound systems. Dad's sharp mind didn't go unnoticed at school, and he applied for and won a place at the newly founded Churchill College, Cambridge, studying engineering. College life suited Dad to a T, and he was undoubtedly very happy at Churchill. The college had a Henry Moore sculpture on loan in the grounds, and Dad loved to tell the tale of a bunch of students hanging a sign on it under cover of night that read, "We want some more." To his delight, Henry Moore heard of the sign and promptly loaned another sculpture to the college. I could never work out if Dad was one of those students, or perhaps it was his cheeky mind behind the plot. Cambridge also offered a chance for Dad to indulge in his second passion of entertaining. He joined the Pentacle Society Magic Group, where he made lifelong friends. He specialised in close-up card magic, and performed the dancing cane and could read minds when a stage act was required. Dad loved the misdirection of magic. When he first met my wife Caroline, he performed a card trick for her. It started, "Now, I want you to look deeply into my eyes." Look into my eyes. That's not part of the trick, I just like your eyes. Ian and I were a harder act to please. When I was at St Mary's Primary School, just across the road from here, Dad came and performed for the school. He started his legendary mind-reading trick by pulling out his magical mind-reading device. "This is my magic mind-reading device," Dad proudly proclaimed to the rapt group of 6 and 7-year-olds. "No, it's not, that's Mum's whisk," came my reply from the audience. Bless him, Dad didn't miss a beat, and the performance went on to rapturous applause. It is possible that Dad spent too much of his time at Cambridge entertaining and not enough studying. Near the end of his second year, he injured his thumb putting up the lighting rig for a performance. The thumb went septic and he was barely able to write come the end of the year exams, which he proceeded to fail in epic fashion. The college were forgiving though, and he was allowed to stay on and went on to graduate with a 2-2. For anyone who knew him and how smart he was, that grade is evidence that he had other things on his mind than engineering. After graduation, Baird found a job at Singer Sewing Machine's newly started computer company called Freedom. This was not least because it was based in Bristol, so a short trip back to the family at Hunger Hill. When Dad happily told them about getting the job, they had news of their own to share. They were emigrating to New Zealand. That must have been an incredibly hard time for Dad. But true to form, he decided to make the best of Bristol. He sold enough mechanical calculators for Freedom that his first bonus cheque was enough to buy a little Honda sports car. He lived in the most Desirez address in Bristol, Royal Crescent, and he joined the local drama society. It was here that Dad met his third and greatest passion, Mum. Their relationship started with Dad doing an odd kind of favour. Mum was due to go on holiday with her parents to Spain. They were taking the ferry across, and at the time there was a deal on where if there were 4 passengers, then the car went free. Baird was never one to turn down an opportunity, so he bravely volunteered to go along. And it was brave. If you ever met Sue's mum, you'll understand that spending 15 hours in a car under her watchful gaze, whilst trying to keep your hands to yourself, would have been very scary. Baird persevered, however, and their love blossomed. In Sue, Baird found a kind, generous, beautiful woman, who it turned out was no mean cook. And Sue found a charming, cheeky, and creative partner in Baird. They were a perfect match for each other. 18 months later, on Christmas Eve 1970, Baird popped the question, and Mum said, yes. They were married on June 26, 1971, which is an auspicious date, as 39 years later to the day, Caroline and I married. We've been able to celebrate 6 wonderful anniversaries with Mum and Dad. I would say, though, that our wedding was a much calmer affair. Somehow in 1971, Dad had failed to get the correct paperwork to be married, so he spent the morning of the wedding racing between registry offices. He arrived a fashionable 25 minutes late for his own wedding. Being late for things was part of what made Baird Baird. But for a few years later, it was Mum's turn to be late, and 9 months on, Ian was born. As I can now testify, becoming a father is a sobering experience, which means you grow up very quickly. Not so for Dad. He still had his trains set in the loft with the bungalow in Broadstone, and playing trains kept Dad young. In 1973, Baird had started working at Sherry and Haycock, a local builder's merchant. He was hired to build the very first timber trade stock control system in the world, something that everyone said couldn't be done. Can't wasn't a word in Dad's vocabulary, so build it he did. It was a pioneering feat that we're all rightly proud of. A few years later, I joined the scene, and we were for a long time the family of 4 with the Datsuns that were the Oldrey clan. We had an idyllic few years as far as I can remember. Then in 1981, we had what could be called a big year. It started in January when the Oldrey clan moved to West Moors. After a lifetime of moving around, Baird decided that West Moors would be where he laid his roots. In many ways, he was like the opposite of the man in Pixar's movie Up. Rather than inflate balloons to let the house fly away, Dad hoarded everything and anything he could lay his hands on to ensure he couldn't be moved. It was suitably fitting and right that he was able to pass peacefully in the home he had clung on to for so long with Mum by his side. In August 1981, Sherry and Haycock made Baird redundant. He'd made their system so they didn't need him anymore. Dad's desire to optimise kicked in big time. He'd made one system, but he knew he could make it better. So much like with his trains, Dad decided to take the old system to pieces and put it back together again. On October 1st, 1981, Sue and Baird set up 1025 software in the spare room. By the next year, the new system was complete, and Dad was able to sell it back to Sherry and Haycock for over 10 times his previous salary, something that must have felt incredible. He also sold it to several other companies, and 1025 was an overnight success. It grew from strength to strength, from the spare room to an extension paid for by the Sherry's deal, to a series of offices around Westmoreland and Ferndown. 35 years later, 1025 is still in business, being expertly run by Ian. Before he passed, Dad told me how proud he was of all the work Ian has put in and everything he is achieving, whilst following Dad's model of tear it down and rebuild it better. Dad worked at 1025 for the rest of his career, and he never really stopped, even when he retired. His and Mum's hard work put Ian and I through school, and allowed Dad to engage in his passions. He built a string of railways, including one that was pinned to the underside of the dining table. He was an active member of the Westmoreland Drama Society for many years, helping build sets, run lighting and soundboards, and even act from time to time. On one memorable occasion, he played a doddery old man in a farce where he got to drop his trousers on stage in front of the whole village. Dad really embraced the role and made it his own. Dad loved spending time with Mum more than anything else. So even though he wasn't an actual singer, he got involved with Mum's many choirs and their shows. His role was as compere, holding court and introducing the various acts in his deep and personable presentation voice. On occasion, he even squeezed in the odd magic routine. When the time came to retire from 1025, Dad decided to speed up, not slow down. He became chairman of the Dorset Village Halls Association. He threw himself into the drama and singing, and he set about building the railway to end all railways. Along with Andrew, our vicar today, but Mum and Dad's friend every day for the last 11 years, Baird set about building the Wanton and Lazy Garden Railway. Hopefully you can all join us after this to enjoy the fruit of their labour. I remember Dad being a fairly sporadic church attendee when I was young, probably because running your own business is a 24/7 deal. That changed when Andrew and Zara moved to Westmoreland. The vicar who played trains was a vicar worth listening to. Retirement also allowed Sue and Baird to go on the trip of a lifetime to India, visiting the place he was born so many years ago, and the tennis court where his dad has been shot, trying to fetch water for his besieged troops. I think they even managed to squeeze in a train ride or two. Baird's life and all our lives changed in January 2 years ago. The doctors had run their tests and Dad had cancer. Being Baird, it was an extremely rare cancer, which I think gave him an odd sense of pride. He thought it would be too hard to tell Ian and I face to face, so he decided to email us. I don't know what words he used, but it somehow offended my spam filter and I never got that email. I got a phone call from Ian, which was far from an unusual occurrence. He asked, rather tenderly, how I was doing. "All good here," was my response. Ian assumed the pain was too raw and I was in denial, so he didn't pursue the matter. It was a whole month later when I was visiting and we were sat around the kitchen table that I found out. Everyone was talking in some strange code I didn't understand. Things will be different now. We need to make sure we spend lots of time together. It'll be all right, and so on. In the end, I'd had enough and demanded to know what was going on. "I've got cancer," said Dad. "Didn't you get my email?" It's odd to think of it now, but we all laughed so hard right then, like we'd laughed so many times around that table. Every cloud has a silver lining, and for us the silver lining was that Dad's monthly treatment was at Guy's Hospital in London. So once a month, Mum and Dad would drop off the dogs with us in Guildford, pop off for his treatment, then come back for a family meal at our home. They were magical times of laughter and happiness. On Dad's third session in London, Mum wasn't able to go with him. It was a 2-day treatment plan, so Mum asked if I could pop up and see Dad in the evening. Guy's Hospital is opposite the Shard, so I took Dad up there for cocktails. There was nothing on Dad's numerous drug packages that said avoid alcohol, so we had several cocktails, then rolled down the road to his favourite Italian restaurant, where he and Mum were fast becoming locals. We were treated like family, and when we thought we couldn't drink a drop more, the maitre d' brought over a flagon of limoncello, which we proceeded to polish off. I don't know how Dad felt the next day, but I know I didn't get much work done. Unfortunately, cancer wasn't the joke that we thought it was. Dad got a bad infection in his replacement knee, which meant he spent 7 weeks in hospital. Again, there was a silver lining. Mum and Dad were visiting us in Guildford when the problem was diagnosed. so his 7 weeks were spent in the Royal Surrey Hospital. We got to look after Mum and visit Dad several times a week, including our Sunday evening ritual of stinking out the ward with Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dad's favourite. Whilst his knee healed, the cancer did not. Dad held on long enough to meet his grandson, my son Xander, whose middle name is Baird, named in Dad's honour. When Xander was born, he didn't look much like me at all. If we hadn't gone through IVF, I would have been looking for a paternity test. But there are times when Xander will lift one eyebrow inquisitively and stare cheekily into my eyes, that I could swear it's Dad looking back at me. We were lucky this summer to have a blissful holiday with the whole family in our very own chateau in France. We had the perfect week together, and for a short while we could all forget about the problems down the road. By the end, though, it was Dad who was keen to get back. He had his annual train day to organise. The day was a spectacular success. The sun shone, the trains chuffed, and Ian and his stag party were able to descend en masse to surprise Dad. The day raised over £2,000 and all for playing trains. After that, Dad made one last superhuman effort. He held on long enough to come up to Guildford for Xander's naming day. Despite being in considerable pain, Baird soldiered on through and gave a magnificent speech, and he and Mum recited Rudyard Kipling's If beautifully. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. This was his last performance. To our family and friends, with Mum at his side, just how he liked. That was his last journey away from West Moors, and it wasn't even a month ago. Baird had 3 great passions: trains, entertaining, and Mum, and the greatest of these was Mum. He led a full life, lived with cheer, bravery, and brilliance. His passing leaves a huge hole in all our lives, but his legacy lives on in Ian and I, and in Xander Baird. Ian told me at the weekend that when he looks up at the night sky and sees a star flickering, he likes to think it's Dad rewiring heaven. I like to think so too. I miss you, Dad, more than words can say. I hope we've made you proud.